The warning to not become a monster implies that people should stop their worst instincts from taking charge. But Friedrich Nietzsche took this idea a little further. He posited that concentrating too much on battling darkness can cause someone to take on its characteristics. Nietzsche wrote, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster, and if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." And this seeming aphorism is widely recognized, yet it's often misunderstood. Many assume it is a simple caution against moral decay, but Nietzsche was describing a psychological shift beyond an ethical warning. When people define themselves entirely by opposition, where their identity hinges on defeating an enemy, they risk adopting its mindset. Power, resentment, and fear, they can distort them into what they initially opposed. Throughout history, movements that start with noble intentions often transform into oppressive powers, which replicate the systems they attempted to destroy. Nietzsche recognized that, and his abyss gazing back finds expression in a number of historical examples. Friedrich Nietzsche considered himself a visionary psychologist, although we tend to value his philosophical contributions. He argued that morality was a human invention shaped by power dynamics and historical resentments, rather than an objective reality. Nietzsche dismissed basic moral dichotomies such as good versus evil, since they concealed the true intricacies of human nature. He saw instincts, desires, and power dynamics as something that's constantly shifting, and his philosophical stance required humans to face struggle while protecting their core identity from its destructive impact. This is at the heart of his warning about fighting monsters. He observed that those who dedicate themselves to fighting injustice often end up justifying injustice in return. The noble type of man experiences itself as value-creating. It does not need approval. It judges that what is harmful to me is harmful in itself. It knows itself to be that which first accords honor to things. It is value-creating. The Khmer Rouge's 4-year rule in Cambodia serves as a particularly fitting manifestation of Nietzsche's philosophical abyss. The revolutionary movement initially aimed to end inequality and foreign influence, but it spiraled into one of history's most lethal genocides. Pol Pot, along with his radical Marxist followers, sought to destroy existing social structures to establish an agrarian ideal society. They labeled intellectuals, city dwellers, religious leaders, and anyone connected to capitalism as enemies. Mass executions, forced labor, and starvation resulted in the deaths of approximately 2 million people, which was equivalent to about 1/4 of Cambodia's population. And many of the same revolutionaries who had fought against oppression became ruthless executioners, turning on their own former comrades under the paranoia of ideological purity. The Khmer Rouge, determined to purge corruption, transformed into the oppressive force they had vowed to destroy. The anti-communist witch hunts led by McCarthyism in the United States during the late 1940s and 1950s demonstrate yet another instance of Nietzsche's abyss. The House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, together with Senator Joseph McCarthy, aggressively pursued investigations of suspected communist activities within government circles, as well as Hollywood and academic institutions. Authorities charged thousands with disloyalty despite lacking substantial evidence to support their claims. And individuals lost their careers and were shamed publicly as nationwide terror took hold. Numerous blacklisted people had no affiliation with communism, yet faced persecution because of their political affiliations or their refusal to participate in government investigations. The United States fought against authoritarian communist governments by adopting similar authoritarian methods on its own. And the United States compromised free speech rights, fair trial standards, and political open dialogue through a wave of mass paranoia and government repression. Joseph Stalin's reign in the Soviet Union might be the most vivid example of Nietzsche's warning, however. The Russian Revolution of 1917 began as a revolt against imperial autocracy and economic inequality. But by the 1930s, Stalin's purges targeted his own allies, former revolutionaries, intellectuals, and military leaders. Millions were executed or sent to the gulags on fabricated charges of treason. Stalin's regime mirrored the paranoia, surveillance, and brutality of the Tsarist system, but on an even grander scale. Revolutionaries who once championed freedom became architects of an even more oppressive state. Stalin himself was consumed by paranoia, treating nearly everyone as a potential traitor, including those who had fought alongside Lenin. Historian Michel Foucault expanded on Nietzsche's insights, proposing power functions as a transformative force that changes individuals rather than just being a tool for control. Institutions that control others do not just exert influence, they fundamentally alter those in charge, reshaping their perceptions, behaviors, and sense of morality. Power, he argued, is not a static possession but a pervasive force that molds individuals through systemic structures. In his studies of prisons, schools, and asylums, Foucault found that those who enforce rules do not remain neutral observers. The act of controlling others conditions them to think and act within the framework of the system they uphold. And this perspective aligns with Nietzsche's warning about the abyss. Those who immerse themselves in fighting oppression risk absorbing the very mechanisms they oppose. Whether through surveillance, punishment, or ideological purity test, they begin to resemble what they once set out to dismantle. People should ask themselves, am I fighting for something or am I just fighting? It is easy to assume moral certainty safeguards against corruption, but history suggests otherwise. Nietzsche's argument is not that people should avoid conflict altogether. Injustice should be fought. Just stay mindful of what the fight does to you. Others might wonder if the answer is to avoid conflict entirely, but Nietzsche rejected this idea. He encouraged self-overcoming, the process of constantly refining one's values, questioning beliefs, and avoiding rigid ideologies. Move forward without losing oneself. Man is something that shall be overcome. The danger of becoming a monster is real, but recognizing that danger is the first step toward preventing it. And if you enjoyed this video, you know the drill. Like, share, and subscribe. Your support really does mean the world. And this one could be an interesting one to watch next.